The behavior of Banu Nadeer fluctuated between resignation and slackness. After the expulsion of Banu Khandaq, Banu Nadeer was glad, because of the high casualties of Muslims at the Battle of Uhud. The Jewish leader of Banu Nadeer rebelled, and treacherously in secret contacted with the polytheists of Mecca. The leader of Banu Nadeer tried to form an alliance between the polytheists, hypocrites, and the Jews, against the Muslims. Situations got more serious when Banu Nadeer tried to assassinate Prophet Muhammad. The assassination plot failed, and Banu Nadeer was expelled by the other Jewish tribes and the rest of the tribes of Medina. Banu Nadeer migrated to Khyber, and they were allowed to take their provisions with them. Banu Nadeer did not leave any provision they owned in Medina. They took with them even the pegs and the beams of their ceilings. But this did not stop the Jews from plotting against the Muslims. In 627 CE, a number of leaders of Jews from Khyber went to the polytheists of Mecca and several other tribes around Arabia, and invited them to besiege and invade Medina, and get rid of the Muslims once and for all. The polytheists of Mecca gladly accepted their proposition, and considered it as an opportunity to exact revenge against the Muslims. The other tribes of Arabia were reluctant to the proposal. The Jews persuaded these tribes by tempting them with hopes of war booty. The Jews also bribed some of the tribes so that they fight the Muslims. The Jews of Khyber offered the Ghatafan tribe half the profits from the sales of their crops, in perpetuity. Therefore, many Arab tribes confederated against the Muslims, and gathered an army of 10,000 soldiers to attack Medina. Scouts of Medina informed the messenger of the God of the impending danger. The Prophet consulted the matter with the Muslims. Together, they came to the decision to dig trenches around Medina as defensive lines. The Muslims dug trenches in adverse conditions as food supplies ran low. The Muslims worked with diligence, but the munafiqun, the hypocrites, participated reluctantly. When the Confederates arrived in Medina, they could not enter it because of the trench. So they laid siege on Medina. The Muslim men, who were 3,000 in number, remained on guard at the trench against the Confederate army of 10,000 soldiers. The Muslim women, children and the elderly remained inside the city. Meanwhile, Banu Nadeer secretly sent emissaries to the Banu Quraiza and tried to persuade them to break the treaty with the Muslims. Initially, Banu Quraiza were against such treachery, but eventually, they gave in to the repeated persuasions of Banu Nadeer. Banu Quraiza attacked the Muslim women and children in the city. The women fought back, and spread rumors that Muslim men are here to protect them. This news reached to the Muslims at the trench. The messenger of the God quickly dispatched some of his companions to persuade the Jews of Banu Quraiza not to breach the constitution, but they declined. The Muslims were in grave danger, with enemies on both fronts, and their women and children open to attack from the Jews of Banu Quraiza. The Prophet therefore sent some Muslim men inside the city to protect the women, children and the elderly from the Banu Quraiza. The Muslims were involved in light skirmishes and arrow hurling at the trench with the enemy. After 1 month of siege, the Confederates were suffering from a shortage of supplies, and they were afflicted by a mighty desert storm. So they forfeited their mission and left. On the same day, the Muslims marched towards Banu Quraiza. Banu Quraiza surrendered on the condition of having a judge of their own choice. The Muslims agreed. The Jews chose Sa'd bin Mu'adh, who was their ally from the tribe of Banu Aus, as the judge, and pleaded that they should be judged by the scriptures of the Jews. After all the hearing, Sa'd bin Mu'adh gave the verdict that all men who has committed treason should be killed, according to the books of Jews, and the rest of the Jews should live under surveillance.